There it was, thick cream-colored, with gold foil shimmering at the edges. A handcrafted invitation addressed in elegant cursive to Rachel Morrison. She held it in her hands like it was proof. Proof that she mattered. Proof that she hadn't been forgotten. For years, Rachel had walked the tightrope between being seen and being invisible. She wasn't the brilliant lawyer like her older sister Melissa. She wasn't the golden boy like Connor, who still lived in the family home and somehow never got blamed for anything. Rachel was the middle child, the peacemaker, the listener, the one who remembered birthdays and booked restaurants for Thanksgiving dinner. The one who called every Sunday just to check in, even when no one called her first. And now here was this envelope, this invitation. It wasn't just to dinner. It was a sign that maybe, just maybe, she was finally being invited in. Not just into a room, but into belonging. She ran her fingers across the golden lettering. James and Patricia Morrison request the pleasure of your company to celebrate 30 years of love and family. For the first time in a long while, Rachel smiled. She started making plans, bought a new navy blue dress, booked a hair appointment, polished her nails. She even found the perfect gift, a crystal vase she'd once seen her mother admire. Rachel didn't have the perfect family, but she had hope. And that night, she'd walk into that restaurant believing, truly believing, that she was finally enough. Rachel didn't follow the family blueprint. She didn't become a lawyer. She didn't marry a man from the country club. She didn't settle down in their quiet hometown where everyone knew your last name and judged your worth by your dinnerware. Instead, she moved to Portland. She built a life filled with color, chaotic, imperfect, but hers. She worked as a graphic designer for a small marketing firm. Nothing flashy, nothing fancy, but honest work that gave her joy. She rented a cozy little apartment downtown with potted plants on the windowsill and handwritten sticky notes on the fridge. She had friends who called her family. She had a Sunday morning routine of coffee shops and farmers markets. She had late-night talks on balconies and laughter that didn't need to be filtered. She wasn't Melissa. Melissa, who'd married a lawyer, had 2 kids who wore matching cardigans and posted curated holiday photos that looked like catalog ads. Melissa, who stayed close to home, close to the script, close to mom's approval. She wasn't Connor either. Connor, who never moved out, never worked too hard, but still got praise for trying. Connor, who somehow remained the baby no matter how old he got. Rachel wasn't either of them. She was the space in between. The quiet pause in family conversations. The one they never bragged about at dinner parties. But she didn't resent them. Not really. She believed that love didn't have to be earned with titles or trophies. She believed that showing up, remembering birthdays, being there when no one else was, that counted for something. She believed it mattered. She believed it would be enough. It wasn't. Rachel stood in front of her bedroom mirror the night before, smoothing down the navy blue fabric of her dress with trembling hands. It was the most expensive thing she'd bought for herself in years. Silky, sleek, tasteful. Not too showy, but just enough to say, I belong here too. She'd paired it with pearl earrings, simple, classic, just like her mother used to wear when Rachel was a child. Her hair had been curled softly by a professional stylist. Her nails were a gentle nude pink, polished to perfection. And in her hands, she carried a crystal vase, carefully wrapped and chosen with thought. She remembered the day her mother had stopped in front of that antique store window, smiling faintly at it, saying how lovely it was. Rachel had remembered. She always did. Every detail mattered tonight. This wasn't vanity. This was yearning. A deep, aching hope that maybe if she got everything just right, if she looked the part, acted with grace, brought the perfect gift, they'd finally see her. Not as the quirky one from Portland, not as the black sheep, but as their daughter. She arrived 15 minutes early. Chateau Laurent glowed like a palace under the city lights. The chandeliers inside shimmered like stars. Rachel stepped through the grand glass doors, heart-full lips curved into a hopeful smile. She walked up to the hostess stand with the invitation held carefully in her manicured fingers. "Hi, I'm here for the Morrison anniversary dinner." "It should be under James Morrison," she said, her voice calm but bubbling inside with anticipation. The hostess flipped through the reservation book, glanced at her screen, then looked back with a tight smile. "I'm sorry, could you remind me of your name?" "Rachel Morrison," she replied, still smiling, unaware of the storm about to hit. The hostess looked again. Her smile faltered. "I'm really sorry, Miss Morrison, But your name isn't on the guest list. Rachel blinked, thought she misheard. There must be a mistake, she said quickly, holding out the invitation like a badge of truth. They sent me this. It's handwritten. The hostess took a polite glance, then looked down at the screen again. I believe you, ma'am, but the reservation specifically notes the exact number of seats and yours isn't one of them. And just like that, the dress Rachel wore, meant to be seen, meant to be noticed, suddenly felt like a spotlight on a stage she hadn't been cast in. She wasn't just not expected. She was deliberately excluded. Rachel heard the laughter before she saw them. It floated through the archway like music from a party she was never invited to. And maybe she never truly was. She stepped forward just enough to peek inside the dining room. There they were, her mother glowing in a deep emerald dress, her father seated proudly in the center glass of champagne raised. Melissa, picture perfect in ivory silk, her husband beside her, their 2 children giggling over dessert. Connor slouched comfortably with a wine glass in hand, his girlfriend hanging on his arm. Aunts, uncles, neighbors, family friends, 12 people, one grand round table, laughter, toasts, clinking glasses, and not a single empty chair. No one noticed her. No one looked toward the entrance. No one wondered, where's Rachel? She wasn't late, she wasn't missing, she was invisible, and yet she was invited. At least that's what she thought. Rachel stood frozen. The sound of cutlery and celebration felt deafening now. Her hands gripped the crystal vase tighter, not out of anger but to anchor herself, to stop her knees from buckling. She looked again, searching for any hint of confusion on someone's face, any sign that someone had realized a mistake had been made, that someone was about to wave her over with a warm smile and an open seat. But there were none. No one reached for their phone to call her. No one stood to ask the hostess what was going on. No one even glanced toward the door. It was like she didn't exist. 12 plates, 12 napkins, 12 stories intertwining around a celebration of family. Rachel wasn't part of the story. Not tonight, maybe not ever. Rachel stood frozen at the entrance, wrapped in silence, while the noise of celebration rang all around her. She didn't expect a parade. She didn't expect applause. But she expected something. A wave, a nod, a smile. Anything to say, "We see you." Instead, what she got was eye contact. For one brief, devastating moment, her mother turned her head. Their eyes met. Rachel's lips instinctively curled into a tiny relieved smile, an automatic gesture of recognition. But her mother's face, it didn't light up, it didn't soften, it went blank. Then without hesitation, her mother looked away. Like Rachel was a stranger, like she was a waitress passing by, not a daughter standing in the cold. That glance, that silent dismissal, it told Rachel everything. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a miscommunication or an error in the reservation book. This was a decision. They saw her, they knew she was there, and they chose to pretend she wasn't. That look broke something, not loud, not dramatic, but deep, final. It was the kind of pain that doesn't scream, it whispers. And in that whisper, Rachel heard a truth she'd tried for years to silence. She didn't belong here. Not really, not ever. Rachel stepped forward. Her heels clicked softly against the marble floor, too soft to match the thunder inside her chest. Each step felt like she was trespassing, like she was walking into a world where she wasn't welcome, even though it was supposed to be hers. When she reached the table, every conversation fell silent. 12 faces turned toward her, some curious, some uncomfortable, some like her father's already annoyed. "Mom, Dad," Rachel said, her voice trembling but clear. "There's been a mistake. The hostess says I'm not on the guest list, but I have the invitation. You sent it." She held up the envelope like evidence in a courtroom, like proof that she wasn't crazy. Her mother looked up first. Her voice was cool, polished, rehearsed. "Darling," she said, "we decided to keep this event intimate. Just close friends and immediate family." Rachel blinked. "I am immediate family. I'm your daughter." Her father sighed and set down his fork with a sharp clink. "Rachel," he said, voice low, almost tired. "We talked about this." Her eyebrows furrowed. "Talked about what?" He gave her a look that said, "You're being difficult. We didn't think you'd actually come." Her heart dropped. "We invited you as a courtesy," her mother added calmly. "You've been so busy with your life in the city, your little design projects, we assumed you wouldn't be interested." It hit her like a slap they didn't forget. They planned this. Her father leaned back, eyes narrowing. "And now here you are, making a scene." Rachel felt the air vanish from her lungs. Making a scene, she was standing there alone, excluded from a family celebration she had been formally invited to, and now they were accusing her of being dramatic. The room shifted. Cousins avoided her gaze. Melissa looked down at her lap. Connor swirled his wine, pretending he wasn't listening. No one stood up. No one said, "This is wrong." Instead, silence closed in thick, choking, and deeply familiar. This wasn't just exclusion. It was gaslighting. They were rewriting the story in real time, right in front of her. And the worst part, they wanted her to believe it. Rachel stood there, still gripping the invitation in her hand, and something finally clicked. This wasn't new. This wasn't an isolated event. It was just the most public version of a story she had been cast in for years, but never agreed to play. In their eyes, Rachel wasn't the daughter. Not really. She was the space filler, the side note, the extra character they called when they needed help moving furniture or someone to house sit during vacations. She was useful until she wasn't convenient anymore. They didn't introduce her with pride. They didn't talk about her career, her apartment, her life in Portland like it mattered. They liked the idea of Rachel, the quirky middle child, the creative one. The one they could smile about in passing, but never actually include. She was family when it made them look good. She was invisible when it made them feel uncomfortable. That night, standing there, humiliated but finally awake, Rachel realized she had spent her entire life trying to audition for a role that was never really hers. She had memorized every line "I'll bring the cake," ill-organized the family photo. Of course, ill-called grandma for her birthday. She thought that if she played the part long enough, played it well enough, they'd let her stay. But this script was never written for her. She was never meant to be the center, only the background, and she was done playing along. Rachel had always shown up. Birthdays? She never missed one. She baked cakes, bought thoughtful gifts, sent handwritten cards even when no one remembered hers. Holiday dinners, she made the reservations. She'd call ahead to the restaurant, double-check everyone's dietary restrictions, and make place cards by hand. Sick relatives. She showed up with soup and blankets. Moving days, she carried boxes until her arms shook. Her dad's surprise, 60th birthday. She planned the whole thing by herself, invited everyone, coordinated the decorations, even put together a photo slideshow with background music that made her mom cry. And when her mom got that nasty flu last winter, Rachel took time off work, drove down from Portland, and stayed 3 nights just to make sure she was okay. No one asked her to. She just did it, because that's what love is. Right. But somehow, every time she gave a piece of herself, it disappeared into a black hole of family silence. No one said thank you. No one called to ask how she was doing. No one celebrated her wins. When Melissa got a promotion, the whole family went out to dinner. When Connor remembered to pay a bill on time, he got praised like he'd won a Nobel Prize. When Rachel landed her first big client in Portland, silence. When she moved into her new apartment and invited everyone to visit, no one showed up. It wasn't that they hated her. That would have been easier to understand. No, what made it worse was the indifference. The subtle suggestion that her efforts didn't matter, that her love didn't count. She had been loyal, over and over again, but it had always been a one-way street. Rachel had had enough. Her heart was pounding, her palms were sweating, but her voice shaky as it was refused to stay silent. "You invited me to your anniversary dinner," she said louder now and then, told the restaurant not to let me in. Her mother's eyes narrowed. "Rachel, please. This is neither the time nor the place." But Rachel didn't back down. "No, this is the time," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "You don't get to humiliate me in front of the entire family and then call me dramatic." The air turned cold. She could feel the discomfort rippling across the table. Forks paused mid-air. Glasses hovered. Everyone was still. Rachel scanned the faces, looking for anyone to speak up. Melissa avoided her gaze. Connor sipped his wine like nothing was happening. Her aunts and uncles looked at their plates as if dinnerware suddenly became fascinating. And then from the far end of the table came a voice. "I thought this was supposed to be family," only said Jennifer, her younger cousin, barely above a whisper. Heads turned. Jennifer looked nervous, embarrassed, but her words had cracked the silence like a thunderclap. "Why was Rachel's invitation different from ours?" she asked softly but clearly. Jennifer's mom, Aunt Linda, instantly shushed her under her breath, but the damage was done. Rachel locked eyes with her parents. Different how she asked. Her mother opened her mouth, closed it, looked to her husband. Her father cleared his throat. "We didn't think you'd come," he repeated weakly. "We had to make some tough choices about the guest list. We were limited on space," Rachel cut him off. "You had 12 people at that table, and not one of them noticed I wasn't there. Not one." Her mother sighed, eyes cold. "If you must know," she said, "we sent you the invitation as a courtesy. That's all, a courtesy." That word echoed in Rachel's head like a slap across the face. This wasn't sudden. It had been coming for a long time. Rachel just hadn't wanted to believe it. 3 weeks before the dinner, she had been home for the weekend, helping her dad file some insurance paperwork in his office. He'd asked her to grab a folder from the desk drawer, and when she opened it, she saw a neatly clipped stack labeled 30th Anniversary Guest List Final Drafts. Curiosity got the best of her. She glanced at the top page. There it was, a list of names: Melissa and her family, Connor and his girlfriend, aunts, uncles, family friends, and near the bottom, Rachel Morrison. Her name was there. But something was wrong. It had been crossed out in thick red ink. Not erased, not smudged. Crossed out. Like a mistake someone didn't regret. She flipped to the next page, another version of the list. This time her name was there again, rewritten neatly. Then on the third page, crossed out again. Page 4 gone entirely. Page 5 added back, then scratched over so hard the paper tore slightly. Rachel remembered staring at those pages frozen. Not a clerical error, not a last-minute change. This was intentional, deliberate. She wasn't forgotten. She was removed. And now, standing here watching her parents dodge the truth, pretend this was all a misunderstanding, she realized they didn't just exclude her. They rehearsed it. Rachel didn't cry in the car. She sat in the driver's seat outside the restaurant, gripping the steering wheel, knuckles white. Her crystal vase still lay on the passenger seat untouched. The silence around her was loud, too loud. But she didn't cry. She reached for her phone, scrolled past missed calls and family texts that now felt like poison, and tapped the name Maya, her best friend, her anchor, her no-nonsense, zero-filter ride or die. "Hello," Maya picked up instantly. Her voice was casual until she heard Rachel's. "They did it," Rachel whispered. "They actually did it." There was a pause. "What happened?" Rachel exhaled, the words trembling. "They invited me just to uninvite me. I showed up and they told the restaurant not to let me in. They all saw me. My mom looked me in the eye and then she turned away like I was nobody." Silence. Then Maya's voice turned cold, sharp, focused. "Okay, first of all, that's psychotic. Second, are you okay?" "I'm not sure," Rachel said. "Do you want revenge?" Maya asked flat out. Rachel paused. "Then I want the truth to be louder than their version. I want people to know." Maya didn't hesitate. "Then we start now. You're not staying quiet anymore." She began listing off ideas like bullets. A written piece, personal, raw, unfiltered. Screenshots of the invitation. A curated Instagram campaign with real-time storytelling. Strategic hashtags to push the story into feeds beyond just their circle. "You have receipts," Maya said. "You're a designer. You know how to present a narrative. And I work with algorithms every day. We can make this spread." Rachel's hand stopped shaking. She wasn't just a daughter who had been humiliated. She was a storyteller with an audience, and now with a purpose. The storm had started, and for the first time in her life, Rachel wasn't running from it. She was walking straight in. The post went live on a Wednesday. It was titled, "The Invitation That Wasn't When Family Uses Love as a Weapon." Rachel didn't hold back. She described everything: the handwritten invitation, the dress, the moment the hostess told her she wasn't on the list, the look her mother gave her, the way the table went silent when she spoke, the exact words, "You're making a scene." But she didn't stop there. She included the receipts, photos of the guest list, her name written, crossed out, rewritten, crossed out again. A screenshot of the invitation, even a message from her cousin Jennifer, apologizing for not speaking up sooner. No drama, no exaggeration, just facts. Raw, undeniable, real. The blog was published on a local website called Portland Perspectives, a platform known for honest storytelling and community voices. Within 6 hours, it had over 800 shares. By the next day, it had crossed 10,000 views. Comments started flooding in. "This happened to me too. Thank you for putting it into words. You're brave. Your story made me cry. Family doesn't get a free pass to treat you like garbage." Some shared their own stories. Others tagged friends, and some recognized the names. A woman commented, "I sat 2 tables away from the Morrisons that night. I saw everything. She's telling the truth." Another post read, "I know that family. I've watched them treat Rachel like she didn't matter for years." The narrative was shifting. No longer did her parents control the story. Rachel did, and she wasn't telling it for revenge. She was telling it for every person who had been made to feel small by the people who should have loved them most. Her inbox filled with thank you messages, people she'd never met pouring their hearts out saying, "You gave me the words I couldn't say." Rachel didn't feel alone anymore. The earthquake had begun, and the aftershocks were only just starting. It didn't take long for Rachel's parents to respond. Not publicly, of course. They weren't that bold. No, they started quietly through whispers, text messages, and phone calls to people in town who still respected them. They told a different story. According to them, Rachel had shown up uninvited. She'd crashed the event. She had been struggling emotionally ever since she moved to Portland, and that night she had an episode. They were worried about her mental health. It was a classic deflection, a script as old as time. When you can't deny what you did, question the sanity of the person who speaks out. At first, Rachel feared it might work. They were, after all, respected in their social circle. Church committee, country club, charity board. They knew how to sound reasonable, polished concern. But then the web caught them. One by one, witnesses began to speak up. A woman named Mrs. Henderson, who had been seated 2 tables away, left a comment under Rachel's blog. "I saw it all. She didn't make a scene. She stood there quietly while her mother looked her in the eye and turned away." It was one of the coldest things I've ever witnessed. Another man, a business acquaintance of Rachel's father, sent a private message. "I thought you were being dramatic at first until I saw the guest list with your name crossed out. That shook me." Jennifer's high school friend who worked at the restaurant left a note anonymously. "I wasn't supposed to say anything, but I was on shift that night. The reservation was for 12 and your name had been explicitly excluded. It was on the computer system." The cracks widened. Even people who hadn't liked Rachel before couldn't ignore the facts now. The evidence was too clear. The pattern was too consistent. The silence from her family members too revealing. Rachel didn't have to shout anymore. She had a crowd that was shouting for her. And the more her parents tried to spin the narrative, the tighter the web wrapped around them, woven not by Rachel alone, but by truth and by all the voices they had underestimated. The call came late. Rachel was still awake, staring at the ceiling, her phone lighting up with Melissa on the screen. She almost didn't answer, almost let it ring into nothing. But something in her gut told her to pick up. Melissa's voice cracked before she said a word. There were sobs, real ones, and then the truth spilled out word by word, soaked in guilt. "They planned it, Rachel. They told me you'd try to ruin the night. They said you'd come looking for attention like always." Rachel's breath caught. She didn't interrupt, didn't scream. She just listened. Melissa continued. "Mom rehearsed what to say in case you showed up. Dad even warned Connor to play along, say something cutting if needed. They made you the villain before you even walked through the door." Rachel felt her chest tighten. It wasn't just that they had excluded her. It wasn't just that they'd lied. They had engineered her public humiliation, like a twisted play with roles assigned, lines rehearsed, and the audience complicit. "I didn't agree," Melissa whispered, "but I didn't stop them either. I just let it happen. I was scared of what they'd do to me if I defended you." Silence stretched between them. Not cold, not angry, just hollow. Rachel finally spoke. "You didn't need to stop them, Melissa, but you could have stood with me." Melissa cried harder. She kept saying, "I'm sorry, I didn't know it'd go this far. I thought it was just another passive-aggressive stunt." But Rachel wasn't listening anymore. Not really, because in that moment she realized being silent is a choice. And Melissa had chosen comfort over truth. Loyalty to peace over loyalty to blood. The betrayal didn't come from a knife, it came from a silence that watched her bleed. And that somehow hurt more. Rachel didn't yell. She didn't beg. She didn't even raise her voice. But her words cut sharper than any scream could have. "Melissa, I need you to do the right thing. Not in secret, not in a whisper. I want the truth, publicly." There was a pause on the line. Melissa's breath hitched. "You mean like a statement?" "No," Rachel said. "A confession." Her tone didn't waver. It didn't tremble. It was the voice of someone who had lost everything and had nothing left to fear. "I'm giving you a choice," Rachel continued. "Either you speak up or I do, and when I speak it won't be polite. It'll be the whole truth. Names, photos, messages, everything. Melissa's silence was heavy. She had seen the blog post. She had read the comments. The public was on Rachel's side and the momentum was growing. Mom and Dad will disown me, Melissa whispered. They already disowned me. Rachel replied, they just did it with wine glasses and candlelight. There was no anger in Rachel's voice now, just exhaustion and clarity. You stayed quiet when I was humiliated. This is your one shot to undo a fraction of that damage. Melissa didn't respond right away, but in her silence something cracked. Pride, fear, guilt. Maybe all three. Finally she said it. Okay, I'll do it. I'll tell the truth. Rachel nodded to no one. Then write it, post it, own it. And just like that, the tide shifted. Rachel wasn't just standing up for herself anymore, she was drawing the line. The days of staying quiet to keep the peace were over. Now truth was her weapon, and she was no longer afraid to use it. It didn't take long. The blog post had already gone viral. Melissa's confession added gasoline to a fire already raging. And then the dominoes fell. Charity circles, university alumni boards, community organizations. All the polished, polite, respectable circles Rachel's parents had built their lives around began to collapse. One by one, we can no longer associate with the Andersons at this time. In light of recent revelations, their position on the board is no longer tenable. Until further notice, their invitation has been withdrawn. It was polite language, but the meaning brutal. They weren't just embarrassed. They were exiled. Rachel's mother, once known for hosting extravagant luncheons for cancer charities, now found herself uninvited from events she used to chair. Her father, who once gave lectures on family values at his church, was now whispered about in the back pews. What they feared most wasn't losing Rachel. It was losing their image. And now it was gone. Friends didn't call. Texts went unanswered. Public silence turned into private whispers. They weren't just grieving a fractured family, they were mourning the death of their social reputation. And no apology could bring that back. 6 months later, it arrived. A birthday card. The envelope was cream-colored, thick, expensive, but there was no return address, no name, no apology, no note that said, "We miss you," just a generic card. Inside, a short message in her mother's handwriting and a gift card tucked in the fold. Rachel stared at it, not for the card itself, but for what it meant. An attempt at contact without ownership, affection without accountability, love without the courage to say, "I am sorry." She didn't open the card, didn't want to hear a single excuse wrapped in polite ink. Instead, she walked down the street to a youth shelter, handed them the sealed envelope, and said, "Someone else can use this more than I ever could." And just like that, she let go, not out of anger, but out of choice. Because silence can sometimes be louder than revenge. It was the week before Christmas. Rachel came home to a small white envelope on her doorstep. Handwritten, curved cursive, old ink. Her breath caught in her chest. She knew that handwriting. It was Grandma Ruth. She opened it slowly with trembling fingers, as if peeling back a memory that hadn't faded. Inside was a simple letter folded twice. No pretense, no judgment. Just love. Sweetheart. If you'd like to come home for Christmas, you're always welcome at my table. Here, family doesn't mean sharing blood. It means sharing love. Love, Grandma Ruth. Rachel didn't cry at the party. Didn't cry at the betrayal. Didn't cry when she gave the birthday card away. But this cracked her open, because it wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't a performance. It wasn't meant for anyone else to see. It was just real. And sometimes one person, just one who sees your heart, is enough to start healing it. Rachel didn't expect to hear from Connor, but then one evening, her phone buzzed. It was a voice memo, short, quiet, real. "I was cruel. I laughed when I should have spoken up. I let them erase you because it was easier. I'm sorry, Rachel." Truly, she didn't cry. She didn't rage. She sat still for a long time, because sometimes hearing someone finally say it, even if it's late, feels like stitching a wound that's long been open. And then there was Jennifer, the soft-spoken cousin who sat at the far end of the table that night, the one who had whispered, "You don't deserve this." Turns out she was the one who sent Rachel the photo of the guest list, the one who leaked the truth, the one who believed her when no one else did. In time, Jennifer and Rachel became inseparable. They met for coffee every week, texted memes at 2 a.m., shared birthdays, holidays, and hard days, because loyalty isn't about who's loudest, it's about who stands with you when the room goes quiet. The old puzzle pieces, parents' status, false tradition, were gone, but new ones, truth, friendship, chosen family, had started to form. And Rachel no longer needed the picture on the box to know what kind of life she was building. Rachel stopped chasing approval. She stopped rehearsing conversations in her head, stopped wondering what she could have done differently, stopped trying to earn a seat at a table that was never built for her. What she searched for now wasn't acceptance, it was authenticity. And in Portland, she found it. At Maya's kitchen table, eating takeout while laughing until midnight. At David's office, brainstorming campaigns that actually changed the city's conversation. At Jennifer's side, discovering what it meant to be seen by family, not by blood, but by choice. This was home. Not chandeliers and champagne flutes, not empty gestures or silent punishments, but mismatched mugs, late-night phone calls, birthday candles lit by friends who showed up because they wanted to. Rachel looked around her life and finally understood she wasn't the black sheep. She wasn't the forgotten one. She wasn't the extra chair. She was family in the truest sense of the word. And Portland wasn't just the city she lived in. It was where she belonged. Rachel's story doesn't end with revenge. It doesn't even end with reconciliation. It ends with truth and choice. Because family, real family, isn't just the people who share your last name. It isn't the ones who raised you in a house full of rules but empty of love. Family is the people who show up, the ones who celebrate your victories no matter how small, the ones who sit with you in the dark and remind you you're not alone, the ones who see you not as an inconvenience, not as an afterthought, but as someone who matters. Rachel finally understood. Family isn't where you're born. It's where you are chosen, accepted, and loved without conditions. She closed the chapter on her parents that night. But in doing so, she opened another one written not in blood, but in loyalty, compassion, and love freely given. And maybe as you hear her story, you're thinking of your own, of the times you felt invisible at your own table, of the silences that hurt more than words, of the love you gave that never came back. If so, Rachel's journey is also yours, because her final words echo for anyone who has ever felt forgotten. You don't have to stay where you are unwanted. You can build a family of your own, and that family will be real because it will choose you back. The forgotten daughter was forgotten no more. She had found her place, and maybe now, so can you. What Rachel's journey reminds us is this family isn't defined by bloodlines, traditions, or appearances. It's defined by love, respect, and the simple act of choosing each other again and again. If you've ever felt like the forgotten one, if you've ever been told you don't belong, remember this: you are allowed to walk away from tables that refuse to see your worth. Because the truth is simple. You don't need to fight for a seat at someone else's table when you can build your own and invite the people who truly choose you. If Rachel's story touched something in your heart, you are not alone. Here on Pieces of Soul, we tell stories that remind you of your worth, your strength, and your right to be loved without conditions. Hit subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss the stories that just might heal a part of you. Because sometimes the right story at the right time can change everything.